recording now. There we go. So this is just an example, right? I've just chose this dome shape as for random. Let me hide. So this is just a random dome shape that I chose. And I want to use it as the base for my building sculpting in Blender. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to have it in correct scale. So it needs to be 1-to-1 scale. Right now I see that I'm working in millimeters, right? So I want to change it to meters, right? So that my building is described in meters. I will type in units in Rhino and change this from millimeters to meters. I'll hit OK. It will ask me, would I like to scale everything? No, thanks, I don't. So everything that was in millimeters is now in meters. And if I measure, well, let me just do a bounding box. If I measure this guy with the bounding box from here to here, it's 172 meters, maybe a little bit too much, right? So I will be working with this. Sorry, I'll be scaling this down drastically, of course, but I'll be scaling it down according to what kind of height I want, because I'm not sure about the length, but I am pretty sure about the height. So let's say if this is 10 meters, then half of it is 5 meters. That should be 2.5 meters. Well, instead of 10, I'll choose something like scale from here to here, 8 meters. Okay. Just a small pavilion guy. 8 meters. I'll just move it somewhere closer to 0, 0, 0 coordinates. And actually now I don't need the curves anymore, so I'll just unlock. Hello, are they? Yeah. Cell CRV, hide. I'll just hide them so that they're not in the way. Okay, so I have my shape, and this shape is what you call it, the 8 meters tall. So let me give it thickness. I'll just use offset mesh, and I'll say that the thickness of the shape is like 20 centimeters, so 0.2, something like that. I think 20 centimeters is, more than reasonable for this kind of a dome shape. You could go even thinner, but what's the difference, right? I'll just go for 0.2. Hit offset, and you can see it does mess up in some places. For instance, here. So let me see if I offset it to the other side. So if I flip all and hit offset, ew. Just a second. For some reason, this happens. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. Seems to be all clean. That is very strange. It's as if some of the faces are somewhat transparent. Never seen that happen before. With every update, there's a new thing. This is a good mesh, does not have any intersections. That's fine. Okay. What if we rebuild it? Okay, if this happens, then what I prefer doing is I just run Grasshopper. I run Grasshopper, I reference in that mesh, the broken mesh. Set one mesh like that. I deconstruct it, or even let's just try clean, combine and clean. and bake out the output of combine and clean and just see what we get from it. Still broken, what the? Okay. So then I will deconstruct mesh and use construct mesh and just see if, you know, if it's going to solve the problems for me. No, it doesn't. What's up with that? Oh. What if I do this then? Sorry for taking a little bit of time. Am I in? No, I'm in shaded view. Cool. All I needed to do was just flip it. Okay, so I don't even need to do this part. So no Grasshopper necessary. It's just if you see transparent mesh like this, right? It seems like it's inverted. You just select it and you flip. Use flip, and then it's going to shade properly. Actually, for this one, I'll be using this mesh right here for exporting, but it's you know, doesn't matter which one you use. Since I used Catmull Clark on it, might as well use this one. Okay, so I'll just select it, export as desktop into desktop as OBJ again, and I'll just call it my form. Hit save. Okay. There we go. So now it's time to open up Blender and load in both the landscape and the form. So as per usual, first of all, I will, oh, come on. What? Go there. First of all, I will be deleting all of the unnecessary stuff. A to select all, delete to delete it. And then I will be importing my landscape first. Well, it doesn't matter which one you import first, but the landscape is bigger, so I'll just import it first. Bayfront OBJ, desktop, landscape. And in my case, Z is up. Import OBJ, bam. Have my landscape. And you can see it's, you know, it's written here in the top right corner, landscape 1. So we have that going on. Then I will continue importing, file, import, chat is in the way, file, import, OBJ, my form, Z is up, import, and there I have my doodad, my pavilion thingy. So I'll just position it. I'll just, in the top right corner, I'll click on the Z direction so that it gives me the top view, and I'll just position it in top view. Let's see, somewhere here. Where are we? Somewhere here. And then I will switch to X view, for instance, and I'll position it, you know, height-wise somewhere here. I'll just find an intersection area where it kind of still sits on, you know, it kind of intersects with the whole landscape. Something like this. So see how each, let me show you from the below. You see how all of the legs are sticking into the landscape? That's what I want, right? I don't want parts of the building to be, flying above the landscape. Something like this. Everyone with me so far? If the landscape is black, or if this is black, then you go to the material settings, viewport display settings, sorry. Change to matte cap. Change the matte cap to whatever color. And instead of material, use object color. That will fix the shading. So we have this thing working. Seems to be nice. Okay. So now the first thing that we check whether or not it's going to work is just simple Boolean union, right? So I will select you can either select the form and Boolean union the landscape with it, or you can select the landscape and Boolean union the building with it, right? So it's both ways work. I will just select the form. I'll go to the modifier properties tab on the right-hand side, where you have the wrench, blue wrench icon. Add modifier, and I'll choose Boolean. So this modifier is added. And operation, I'll choose union. Like that. And object, I will just choose the landscape, like that. So you can see we get the rave party again, and that's because the original landscape and the one that was joined to this are both visible in the same location, so it's making errors with shading. But if I apply the Boolean operation now, so I hit apply, and I hide the original landscape, you can see that now my form has a landscape connected to it. And if I look at it from the bottom, there are these, this clean joinery between the landscape and the form, right? Well, now let me know, did it work for everyone? Good. Okay, nice. So you can sketch. You can sketch the building out, as I've shown you yesterday, straight up in Blender by using those sculpting brushes. Or you can import, something like this and merge it with the landscape and sketch on top of already modeled out form. And I believe in 90% of your cases, this is a much better approach because you have spent quite some time on the form already, might as well use it, to sketch upon. Very similar to the metaphor workshop that we had. So now I'll go to Sculpt Mode in the top left corner. I'll change this to Sculpt Mode. And here, for instance, you can see, now it's time for the tablet. Let me attach the tablet. So first of all, there's no symmetry here, right? So I cannot use symmetry. And if I use symmetry, it's going to make some weird decisions throughout the building. So I can turn off symmetry either by clicking this X icon here, turning off all highlighted icons for the symmetry in the top part, or I can click on the right-hand side, I can click on the wrench and the screwdriver white icon. White wrench and screwdriver, the first one, which is, I don't remember how it's called. I assume it's just properties. Wait, let me see. no, active tool and workspace settings, whatever. In that icon on the right hand side, I choose symmetry and I turn off mirror for X. Is there a setting to make a 3-divided symmetry? I have no idea what 3-divided symmetry is. 3-fold symmetry, you mean? Is it radial? So it's like a, yeah, you can, but it will need to be, so you can turn on symmetry on multiple axes, or you can turn on radial symmetry, meaning that it's going to be like polar array of the brush, right? Best way to learn about this is just with sculpting a sphere on top of a sphere, because it will, you know, clean file, just a sphere, and you sculpt on top of it with different symmetries, and you'll see exactly what they do. At least that's how I learned it. So we turn off symmetry for this one because our landscape is not symmetrical, and nothing that we're going to be doing here is going to be symmetrical. I will turn off dynamic topology as per usual. Change the detailing to brush detail, and detail percentage 25% is fine. And then I can go to town at it with it, right? So the first thing, let me expand that menu. Usually this is how I set up my menu, so that I can see all of the icons at the same time. So we have something like this. And now let's see how we can kind of solve the intersection for one of these legs. So first of all, if you just use smooth now, and let me increase the size of the smooth. If you use smooth, it's gonna be a little bit wonky. That's because smooth doesn't work with dynamic topology, meaning it doesn't rebuild the amount of the resolution of the mesh. So instead of using smooth, or rather before using smooth, I will be using this Simplified tool right here. I'll just hit it with simplify from both corners. And actually, let me show you what's going on. Right? So when I'm hitting it with simplify, or even better, let's do it this way. When I'm hitting it with simplify, see how it's creating more and more polygons, right? That's what simplify does. So now we have enough resolution for this to be smoothed out. Why is it called simplify? Well, look. Wait, what? Oops, there we go. Why is it called simplify? That's because I can zoom out and simplify everything. Like, think of it this way. What if it's really hard to zoom that close? It's really heavy. How many vertices do you have, Mia? $36,000, and it's hard to. No, that's not me. Oh, everyone has 36,000 vertices. What's up? So it's definitely not the mesh that is heavy. It's something else. Why is that heavy? What do you mean by heavy, first of all? Like, what does it do exactly? Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, just a second. I'll make it a little bit louder. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's so slow to the right. It's just that I can zoom in to a certain point, but after that, it's barely zooming in further. You just notice that it's like a little bit at a time, but I can't get close.
What you can do is, do you still have that? That's so strange. Why does it do that? Okay. Where was it? View. So it's not the clipping. Just a second. Okay, so what you can do is, let me zoom out here, and I will change this back to object mode, right? And now here in object mode, you have that 3D cursor thingy, right? So on the left-hand side, you have this selection menu, selection icon, and you have the 3D cursor icon on the left-hand side menu.
Yes.
Which means that everywhere where you click with it, it's going to place this kind of a 3D cursor. Does that work?
Like clicking it and zooming in? No.
No, it's not. Right now, you shouldn't be able to zoom in, but it's just you're going to place a point towards which the camera anchors itself.
Yeah, no, I can't see the point, but
you can't see the point.
Well, I mean, this is obviously just my problem, so maybe we should.
No, but this is an important one because sometimes the camera does tend to jump away. And this is how you solve it. Is you go to object mode, you select the 3D cursor tool, and you just put it somewhere near the building or somewhere under the building, even better, in the center of the building. And then you would go to back to Sculpt mode, and I believe then if you expand this menu on the right-hand side, right top-hand side of the screen, where we had the focal length and all of that jazz, then you could tick mark lock to 3D cursor, and it would lock the camera to that 3D cursor that you've placed.
That works for me.
Works? Okay.
Yeah.
Super. Now let's move on. So here I've just been kind of messing around with it, right? Just smoothing it out a little bit, nothing, nothing fancy. And I've smoothed out the corners like so, just to show you one more thing, one more tool, which is this Inflate. No, that's blob. That's Inflate. The Inflate tool. What this one does, we need it a little bit smaller. It thickens up the edges, right? So it inflates the mesh, right? Makes it thicker at places, which I find quite useful. Unless you kind of hit it in a weird angle, so then it plays the ground. But like the Inflate tool is really useful, I think. So I'm just messing around with it, seeing what can be done. And one important thing is if I grab the draw tool and I kind of draw on top of my surface here, in the back, you can see that, you know, it's actually taking the vertices from the back and pushing them. Come on. Come on. What the heck? Now my camera is messing up. Okay, enough with the lock to 3D cursor. Don't like that. So it's going to take that bulging geometry, and it's going to kind of mess it up for me, right? So I want to fix it, and I can fix it by going to brush settings here in the top. And remember when I said that front faces only is nice to have with thin shells? So in this case, if I turn on front faces only and I brush, and then I kind of look at it from, crap, my camera really messed up now. If I look at it from the other side is not affected, right? So this is where front faces only is really, really useful. Let me see what's up with the camera. Oh, the cursor is fine. That's strange. Up to 3D cursor. What the heck is going on? Anyway, that seems to be to fix it. So that's that. And then, yeah, all you need to do is just mess around with it and see, you know, how you would treat this whole shape, right? What kind of a surface quality you would give for the landscape, what kind of surface quality you would give for the shape, and that's going to be exactly the same process as I've shown you yesterday, right? Hitting it with flatten, hitting it with some brushes, carving in, carving out, simplifying, smoothing, and then later on creating those sweet seams with, where is it? Stabilized stroke. And there we go. For instance, here, just one. Oops. Is there clipping planes for Blender? Having trouble reaching some parts of my building? I do not know. You will need to Google that. Don't know about clipping planes. I assume there are. There is one thing that you can do that might be useful. We have 1 minute left, and this is going to be the last thing that I show you. And then after it, we're going to have that 5-hour break, and then we'll continue at 2 o'clock. But you can use box hide tool. This one, to hide, to kind of draw around the things that you want to hide, like so. And only kind of box, no, it doesn't make the, well, the file itself is not less heavy, but it's easier to rotate around it and so on, for sure. So you can use box hide to hide stuff. And then if you want to get back the view, you go here in the top where it says view. And there, here you should have, where the heck was it? Let me start recording just so that you can hear what I say. can you insert the clipping plane in Blender immediately? No, you can't. But what you can do, and I've shown this in the morning session. Actually, it's a good repetition. So what you can do is, let's say I'll just jump to Z view. You can use this tool on the left-hand side, which more chat. I can use the tool on the left-hand side, which is the box hide tool. And I can just select stuff that I want to hide. Just like that. So I'm just using box hide. If I want to unhide it, then I would go to Sculpt, Show All. Oh, that's not that. Sculpt, Show All, and then it would unhide everything. Can I Control Z now? Yes. So I'll keep it hidden for now. Should we think about the technical connection with the ground while modeling the shape with the landscape? Technical connection, you mean the foundation blocks and so on? Or what do you mean by technical connection? No, because it's all geometry, right? So it doesn't really matter at this stage how it's constructed. We will take care of that at later stages. God damn it, this is so laggy. I think it's the detail percentage. I'll try. Yeah, now when I'm recording, it's extremely laggy for me. Yeah, what can you do? So that's that. And now today and tomorrow are going to be basically me just playing around with this landscape and you asking me any question that you have from any parts of these workshops that we've had, right? So because the technical part of it all is kind of done, and I want to hear from you. You know, what kind of what's not clear? What do you need me to explain better? And it doesn't need to be necessarily technical. It can be something, you know, aesthetics based or whatnot. Yes, if you import it back into Rhino, it's going to be a single closed mesh. Tomorrow, I'm going to show you what needs to be done with it to make it work. Right. Let me expand the chat so that if you want to, yeah. This is more about what happens on Thursday. What happens on Thursday? Okay. On Thursday, we have a review, as you might have noticed. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. So on Thursday, we have a review. And the review will start at 2 o'clock. And it will end at 2 o'clock, not at 2, at 8:15, and it will end at 4 o'clock. Hopefully, it will end at 4 o'clock. You need to, like, what you hand in, I'll talk about that tomorrow a little bit more, but it's mostly going to be all of your progress so far, and it's going to be the site analysis that you've done. So that's going to be a big thing. It's going to be your method that you chose to create the form and the form itself. So this what I'm showing you now, like on the screen, this is also something that I would definitely suggest you have for the review, just simply because it's so much easier for us to talk about your building if you have some sort of a form. the more concrete you are with your form, the more concrete we are going to be in giving you feedback. If you're kind of all over the place and you're presenting whatever, I don't know, like usually the students like to present the site for like 5 minutes straight and then use up the last minute presenting their form. That immediately tells me that you don't have a form, right? If you're spending so much time presenting the site. So please don't do that, right? So you should have the form. And if you're talking about the form, in a concrete way, then you will get a very concrete feedback. If you're talking about the form in a very abstract way, then you will receive abstract feedback, which is going to be, oh, you could do this or that, or you could do this, maybe that, I'm not sure, look at references and so on. So if you want us to be concrete, you need to be concrete with the form. 15, your presentations are going to be 15 minutes, 5 minutes for a student and 10 minutes for the teachers. I will give you a list of what needs to be presented tomorrow in the morning. When I use Sneak Tool in Sculpt, it is really bad quality. How do I change that? Okay, let's see. Where can I use Sneak Tool? Yeah, I'll use it here. So let me just increase it. You don't need to do it, right? Or alternatively, I can show you a quick alternative. In just a second, Daniel, I'll show you how I would work with those tentacles in a different way, because the hair is created not in the same way as the hair is usually not sculpted. Might be a stupid question, but could you show how you can make the size of the camera if you like to export rendered images? No, just get it into, like, I don't suggest learning rendering in Blender at this point, since you all have, since it's possible to use V-Ray, and you have, just learned V-Ray. So I don't suggest like rendering. Also, like rendering these images, there's no reason to render these shapes. These should not be, how do I explain? Once you start rendering it, even before that, the object becomes precious to you. And once the object becomes precious to you, you stop changing it. And when you stop changing it, you freeze and you don't progress with the project. You should start rendering like 2 weeks before the final, or 2 or 3 weeks before the final review. If you render before that, it's usually something that you're shooting yourself in the foot, basically, because it messes with your psychology and your relation to the form. For instance, here, I could come in on the next day and just say, nah, I want this to be actually kind of thicker. I want some sort of a form here, and I want it to be kind of extending like that. And maybe I want this dome shape, the top of the dome to be slightly lower. Right. So I can do that in here, but if I start kind of messing around with it and just rendering the hell out of this, first of all, I waste time, because it's, rendering really doesn't help me out with it. Second of all, I start thinking about lighting, material, and so on without actually having the form to apply those things onto, right? So in that case, it doesn't make any sense to to do visuals before you have the form. What's next? Yeah, so Andrea, you said, could you simplify first to make it more detailed? Oh, you mean the for the snake tool, the snake hook tool. The snake hook actually uses the dynamic topology, so it shouldn't be a problem. Like the fact that you don't have enough resolution. Oh yeah, and to answer the question about how many polygons the snake hook has, so you just change the detail percentage to a lower number. And that will increase the amount of polygons that the snake hook has. Hope that answers at least one of the questions. I'm a little bit blabbing now, just because I need to practice, you know, drawing and talking at the same time. So I'll be repeating a lot of things, a lot, throughout this whole session. Oh yeah, here, almost forgot. Daniel, why didn't you remind me? If we go back to object mode, and I'll have this recorded, right? So don't worry if you miss it. If I'm back in the object mode and I kind of create a spline, so let me just move here, Shift A, curve, curve, Bezier, or is it path? Oh man, I don't remember. Let me try and create a path. So I create a path with someone's writing something. Some layers, yeah, just no, I don't have the time. So I have created a NURBS path. I have no idea where it is. Oh, it's created right here on my 3D cursor. So I'll just move it to the side and kind of zoom into it. View, up, selected, view, frame selected. What the? that's a weird thing. If that happens, by the way, it means that it remembers the translation. You know, it remembers the origin of this path. So what you can do is you can go to Object, Apply, All Transforms, and now it's not going to be messing up anymore. So I have a path here, NURBS path. I believe if yeah, that's good. And then let me do a modifier on it. And I believe the modifier is called, chat is in the way. Modifier is called, is it solidify? Oh, man, I never remember. I'll try solidify. No, it's not solidify. Shit. Why do I always forget these things? Also, chat is right in my face. I need to minimize this. By the way, guys, do you, when I'm working with chat on the screen, do you see the chat or is it just me? Oh, so you don't see the chat, huh? Okay. What the fuck? Okay, let me delete this. Save. General. Okay, and let's just do it in a clean shape. I had too much shit flying around there. So back here, I will just create a curve, and I believe it's a path, or maybe it's a NURBS curve. I'll just do a path just in case. So my path is created somewhere. I have no idea where it is. Where is it? Oh my God. A little bit annoying. There we go. There's my path. It was here all along. So I have this guy, and I believe that now if I use a new curve and I create another path, move it kind of here and create a circle. Well, we will figure it out. So curve, let's say NURBS circle. Move it somewhere here. Scale it down. Something like this, rotate it and around, not X, around Y, 90 degrees. Wonder if this will work. First, I'm just checking if it's gonna work or not because I have no idea. And if it works, then I will explain what I did. Okay, so I have that. And now, if I have that, or is there a way to? Oh, gosh, okay, I got it. So I wanted to use a modifier on this, but it's not actually a modifier. Okay, so sorry, screwed up. I will probably cut this in the YouTube video out. It's not a modifier that needs to be added here to create this kind of tentacle, but rather it is an option of this curve itself, which is right here, the green line. When I select my curve, right, and I click on the green icon, and it's not a curve, it's a path, sorry. When I select my NURBS path, and I select this green icon here, which is basically the properties or the settings just for this path. By the way, why didn't you tell me that my microphone is shit? What about now? I assume now it's going to be a little bit quieter, but it should be better. Or is it worse? Okay. Tell me. If the microphone is shit, tell me. Back here. So NURBS path, you go to settings, and here you have geometry where you can use a taper object, and you can use a bevel object, right? So for instance, if I were to select my path here, and for taper object, I would use this another NURBS path that was slightly bent, like so. You can see how bent it is here, right? So that's my taper object. And I use a NURBS circle as my bevel object. So I'm back to this path. I click on the pipette for my bevel object and choose the circle. It's going to take a cross section of that circle. Well, it's not a circle, it's an ellipse. It's going to take a cross section of that ellipse, and it's going to taper it, basically scale it down according to the length of the curve, according to what kind of, what kind of curvature I have here, right? So if I select my path here, which controls the taper, and I select these two control points and move them like so, see how this changes? So in doing so, you can have full control over, you know, the form of the pipe, right? And let me hit tab again to get back out of the edit mode and hit tab for the circle here. And kind of play around with, let's say, these control points, just move them closer. These control points, move them closer. Maybe this one gets down. I don't know. You know, so I can mess around with that in the section. And also one more thing is that, so then you need to have these two objects in the scene, but you can have them hidden. Which one was it? This and this. And this is just a curve, right? So then you can choose to fill caps. So it's going to fill up the ends so that it's a solid object. And you can say that bevel start here is not 0, but rather, you know, oops, never mind, wrong one. What was it? Taper, map taper. Shit. Bevel end, yeah. So the bevel end, it needs to kind of end at not at this point, because this point has 0 millimeters in thickness, right? So it's way too sharp. But if I choose the bevel end to kind of end here, like so, or maybe a little bit longer, something like that, then it's not 0 millimeters. So it's going to kind of cap more properly. But now let me show you what's cool about it. First of all, I can duplicate this, Shift D. Shift D duplicates things. So I can duplicate it. I can select my NURBS path, and you can see it's just called NURBS path 002. And I can mess around with it, right? So I can hit tab, and I can take the control points of it and really go to town with the control points, right? So it's basically like a NURBS curve, right? Nothing fancy about it. Just a NURBS curve, which is getting piped, right? If you want to add more points, I believe it's you need to select one of the endpoints and then hit Shift E. No, hit E. Yeah, just hit the E button for extrude, and then you can add more points. Excellent. Right. So then you have the shape here, and then you can duplicate it once more, hit tab, mess around with its settings, something like that. Maybe this one comes in closer, somewhere here, like that. Right, so you end up with something like this. And then you want to make these two guys into meshes, right? Rather than NURBS paths. So what you do is, you know, once you're happy with it, what you do is you right click, you select both of them, you right click, and you choose convert to mesh. Right, so now both of these are meshes, and you want to merge them together into one shape, right? So you select one of them, go to modifiers, add modifier, Boolean, union, select the other one as an object for union, hit apply. Hello? Yeah, there we go. So then you will have this one, right? And you'll have the, you know, the one that you've attached. So you don't need this one anymore. You just care about the, you know, the Boolean union output. And then it's as easy as getting back into the sculpting mode, using, for instance, smooth to smooth out this. Oh, by the way, if this happens, notice how the polygons are all kind of messy. If this happens, if the smoothing is weird, don't forget to go to like create dynamic topology from it. Where is it? No, not remesh. Dynamic topology, brush detail. I don't know, I'll use like 15%. And first use simplify, like hit it with the simplify around the seam. That was probably not a good idea. Let me just see what simplify did with it. Well, actually, it's not that bad. Like I'm running this with 200,000 vertices. So it's not great, not bad at this as well. I'll just hit it again with simplify. And now let's see how it smooths out. And yeah, we have a problem. So sometimes, oh, it's good that this happened. Let me see if I can show you better what's going on. No, I can't show you better. It's basically Boolean union. It did indeed merge these two guys together, but it didn't do a good job. So you have non-manifold edges all over the place, and it's basically two meshes intersecting. So it's not a clean Boolean union, and this happens a lot, like way too much. So the way to fix this is by simply remeshing it. Hit remesh. Voxel size, I have absolutely no idea, so I'll try 0.1 just to see. Yeah, 0.1 was yeah, maybe 0.1 is not that great. Let me undo, remesh. Let me add like say 0.01. Keep recording this. So decimating the mesh. For instance, right now I'm at 300,000 vertices, and perhaps I want to kind of reduce it a little bit, right? So I would just hit tab. When I hit tab, it gives me the edit mode, right? And now I'll hit A button to select all vertices. And you can see how dense it got here. And I'll go to mesh. The chat is in the way again. I'll go to mesh. Damn it. Mesh, cleanup, decimate geometry. And then it won't do anything by default, but here in the bottom, this menu will appear, decimate geometry. If I expand it, I can choose what's the ratio. So I'll say right now I'm working with 282,000 polygons. I'll say give me like 0.3, like 30% of the original count of polygons. And I wait. And now it looks like that. Right? So it just keeps the polygons where they need to be, right? And then I can hit tab again and continue working with this bad boy. Right? And now I'm working with 84,000 polygons, so all of my brush strokes will be better, I guess. I'll just increase the strength of it a little bit. There we go. Now that's a solid pinch. Any more questions? Or thoughts in general? If there's none, then I will talk a little bit and we will end here then. So the main thing here is not here, but with this course or with these workshops, is that I wanted to give you guys all of the tools necessary to sketch out an idea. And different tools give you different, different tools give you different control level over your shape. So for instance, when you're doing 2D sketching, you have, well, most of us have a lot of control over the 2D version of the shape, right? That's when we do when we just do hand drawing, right? When it comes down to 3D, control of the shape in 3D with hand drawing, it becomes problematic because you need a lot of skill to be able to control it properly, especially with these kind of shapes, right? So that's that. Then we have Rhino, where you have a lot of control over the form, but at the same time, you kind of needs to be really technical and really specific, right? About how what you're doing with the form, how you're building it up, and are you using a loft or whatnot? How is that called? Network surface to build up the shape, right? So you need to be specific about those things when working with Rhino. As long as you are, then actually like sketching in Rhino is fine. Like thinking about form in Rhino is okay, but you do need to be specific about the tools, and you need to kind of have knowledge regarding the tools. Then you have Grasshopper, where Grasshopper, the reason why I'm showing Grasshopper to you guys is because it's a really, really powerful tool, first and foremost. Really kind of fun to see the output of it, once it works. Really fun to see the output. But the problem, there is also a problem with Grasshopper, which I'm using for this course as something that that helps us. It sounds weird, but we're using a problem of Grasshopper to help us. And that problem is, if you want to use Grasshopper for a design project, you need to be extremely specific about the method that you're going to be using, right? So in other words, it forces you to make decisions and kind of stick with them. So that's Grasshopper. It's all about method choosing, right? When working with Grasshopper. What am I doing here? And then you have after Grasshopper, you have Blender, right? And Blender is cool. Like Blender sculpting I think is extremely overrated and at the same time extremely powerful for architects, because it's like a reverse Grasshopper, right? The method that you're using to create the form is absolutely freestyle. So it's like drawing by hand, right? You kind of need to understand, the tools a little bit, that, oh, I'm going to hit it with a pinch and so on, but it's pretty easy. Like the tools are kind of self-explanatory how they work. But the nice thing about Grasshopper is about Blender is that it frees your hand, right? So you can do a lot of crazy stuff with it without actually thinking about topology or without thinking, is this method the correct one, and so on, without thinking about all of the steps that you need to take to be able to create the form properly. What did I do here? Such a weird thing. I don't like that. I'll just flatten it out. Maybe I'll carve into it. So I'm not sure. Like every time when I talk about this, I'm not sure if it makes sense or not. But that's at least my take on it. That's how I see this whole course working. Is that us going through different methods and choosing the one that kind of enables us to create forms in the fastest way possible, but at the same time restricting us from creating complete, trash in the first place. That's why we didn't start with Blender, by the way. If without having an idea about the form, you would just start with Blender, that would be a very, you would all come up with these kind of sculptural pieces and everything would be completely uncontrolled and so on, and it would be very hard to fix, right? But instead we're working with, does that work now? Yeah. By the way, when you see those dimples like that, if you use Inflate on them and then you use Smooth, it just smooths them out. So now when we first worked with Grasshopper to kind of force ourselves to think in a very structured way, and then after we have the first pass at the form, we come back at it with Blender sculpting and just have fun with it, experimenting with the form and seeing what we can get from it. I think that's a much more controlled way, which later on will help us out determining what kind of architectural approach we want to have for the form. Just making rocks here. It's really hard to talk and kind of draw at the same time. I just noticed that I'm creating some sort of a bullshit, like complete nonsense thing here. Any questions about what I've said, or okay, another question from me. Clear? Is it clear what I've said? Because I'm half thinking about what I'm doing and half blabbing about the course. I have no idea if it's clear or not. Mostly clear. You start in a very controlled way and you end in a very uncontrolled way. It's better than starting in a very uncontrolled way and trying to control it later. More clear? Just making a freaking cave here. Just gonna hit it with this flatten. So let me know if you have any questions. I'm just finishing up here, and this is going to, it already became, but it's going to be more of a hangout session. And tomorrow I'll want you guys to kind of get your microphones out and just talk with me. As I in the morning, as I'll be sketching and kind of explaining things, because it's mostly like teaching by doing sort of a thing, rather than teaching by explaining at this stage. How's it going in the living room? I think, yeah, they're consulting. I'm not allowed there. They locked me in the kitchen. Feels like Blender steers you towards a very mushy meeting between site and building. Well, not necessarily. Right now I'm doing a mushy meeting, right? But immediately, if I start coming in here with the whatchamacallit. If I come in here with the pinch, the super pinch, and I start, hello, and I start kind of describing and cutting into it with the pinch tool and also this crease tool, especially the crease tool. Let me increase its strength. Oh, by the way, I haven't shown you the fall off. It's not important, but here, instead of smooth fall off, I can have a sharp one. And then with the crease tool, I can kind of get in here and describe this kind of a creasy shape, like that. So of course, it is sculpting, right? So it's going to be much softer than hard surface modeling. That's why hard surface modeling is called hard surface modeling. But we can, there are no problems that pinch cannot solve. So we can solve all of our problems with the pinch. If pinch cannot solve it, that means the strength is not enough for the pinch. So you just increase the strength and press in the pinch until you see the surface come alive, right? And until you form the surface with the pinch.
Can I ask a question like this?
Yeah, go ahead.
With the pinch, I tried to make like a bench, which was quite small. But then when I did the pinch, it just like mushed everything together. So I thought maybe that was a bit too low res.
It's not the resolution, I think. It's rather the size of the pinch. If I were to increase the radius now of the pinch and go through it.
Okay.
Wait, that didn't help. Come on, just pinch it. Oh, there we go. See how everything gets kind of pinched together? Yeah. That's just the radius of the pinch, right? If it's too much, then it won't grab the corners, but it's rather going to pinch two corners together, right?
Yeah.
So you need to be very mindful about that part of the pinch. Hope that
it's like 6 triangles in diameter, then it still works with pinch.
6 triangles in diameter.
The dynamic topology, would that kind of affect?
Well, the dynamic topology, as long as you use brush detail, it's always going to, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but I'll try. So dynamic topology will always, as long as you're using brush detail, it's always going to choose what kind of what kind of mesh density you need for that size of the brush at that distance, you know, from you to the model.
Yeah.
So that should be how it works. Pinch wise, oops. Yeah, that's the beauty of undo. Pinch wise, this is definitely the tool that I've used the most through and through when creating more hard surface stuff. Simply because it's so nice. Like it aligns, it places all of my vertices in line so well. Right. So I use pinch. Smooth, of course, is also your friend, but usually you smooth out an already kind of defined surface. And let me make this a little bit shiny for you so that you can see better. There you go. So you smooth out already defined surface, an already defined surface, rather than an undefined one. But once you kind of smooth it all out, it becomes really nice. And this will never be perfect resolution. Remember that. That's because we're not, you know, the way we, that's needs to be further out. The way we work with it, that won't let us, won't let this be a perfect resolution simply because this is voxel based, right? And this is mesh based. So it's never, it always will depend over how close you zoom into it, right? Eventually you will end up seeing some of the, you know, voxels, pixels, what polygons, whatnot. But it's still okay. We have 10 minutes left, and that's where we'll end. But where was I? Resolution. So the trick is that once you have this mesh done, then you use it to rebuild the form in Rhino from scratch. I do have a few examples. Remember that helmet that I've shown yesterday? Where was it? Fun 3D. This helmet here. Right? So this one I've shown yesterday, the sculpted model. So this is the sculpted model of that helmet. And if I were to zoom into it, you can see, you know, it's definitely not clean. Yeah, it's definitely not clean. The seams are not that great, and so on. It's all a little bit mushy. It also has a texture attached to it. You know, it's kind of noise texture that I've created. But you know, it's a closed, you know, mesh, but it's not a perfect mesh, simply because it's kind of low resolution. But then tomorrow, what I'm going to show you is how I rebuilt that helmet in Rhino from scratch. So you import the mesh into Rhino, and you rebuild all of the surfaces in Rhino, and then you have a NURBS polysurface model, right? Do I have a? For instance, you can see here, I've rebuilt it in 2 layers. So there's a fabric layer inside of the carbon fiber outer layer. And I didn't want to have that brain thing, like cloth thing on the sides. So I decided to, what the heck, I'll do a radiator, you know, on the sides of this helmet. But yeah, so this one got rebuilt. And most of it is either patch surfaces or network surfaces or lofts, nothing more. So that's what I'm going to be showing you tomorrow. And that's going to be our hangout session for tomorrow. Always say, from here on out, every time when I finish talking, you just say clear. And then I'll understand that I didn't blab too much. Frederick just goes full on Lithuanian with me. Nice. Tape, Frederick, tape. Okay, so that's something funky here. And you can see how I'm taking my time with this, right? So this should be some sort of almost like a hobby thing. You just kind of look at it and you add a compositional thing to it and kind of think, do I want it here? When will you have a full Lithuanian tutorial? Honestly, I couldn't do this tutorial in Lithuanian, simply because I have no idea how things would be called in Lithuanian, how these things would be called in Lithuanian. So I would still, you know, call out brushes as I do right now in English, and it would be all funky and weird. So architects really need a Lithuanian tutorial. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. I would argue against it. Will we have a Google Maps study trip to Lisbon? Oh, right. Crap, why is no one reminding me? Haven't you noticed that I'm all over the place? Lisbon references. Let me, yeah. Ah, come on. Give me. What the? L. That's not an L. L. Lisbon. Close enough. References. That's not gonna be. Oh, okay. Lisbon references. That's close enough. I'll remember. I'll send over them to you later. It's shitty that we couldn't go to Lisbon, but well, what can you do? What can you do? Gotta stay healthy. Maybe next time. But the thing about, okay, I can talk about Lisbon for a bit. So the study trip that got canceled. So the thing about Lisbon is the main attraction there, which was planned, was the joint workshop between Lisbon University, architecture department of Lisbon University, and our group, our school, right? So that was the main thing. Oh, and here, notice how when I'm doing the pinch, it's now catching vertices from the bottom side of the shell, right? Like so. Not the bottom side, but from the other corner. That's what happens when you're too close, or when the radius is too big. So that was the main attraction, right? Having that full day workshop with lectures and so on about computational design and where the whole field is heading. So other than that, I will be sending you over what we would have visited, but it would just I guess it's just going to be a teaser. Right? Oh, we would have seen this and that. Sucks that we didn't. Yeah, Lisbon. Yes, like there are two schools there. One is Porto, and in Porto, and the other one is straight up in Lisbon. So the Porto one is a little bit, I believe it's a little bit stronger than well, at least well known than the Lisbon one. But the Lisbon one has really interesting research being carried out in regards to computational design and urbanism. So I think that would have been quite an interesting discussion. Oops, oh, by the way, last thing today that I want to show is mask tool. So this guy right here, the white stuff, the white icon with the circle in it on the left-hand side, it's a mask. If I brush, well, maybe not here. Let me use it where I have more density. Let's say here, and let me increase the strength. If I brush it on like so, right? That part is masked. And then if I use another brush and kind of just try to build stuff up, see how it's not building up around where the mask is? That's because everything that is masked will not be moved up, or not necessarily up, but will not be affected by the brush. To get rid of the mask, you just go to mask here in the top and choose clear mask, and it's gone. Or is it? And with that, we will end today's tutorials. There, guys. If you have any questions, just ask in the chat later.